Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf. First of all, apologies for my absence last week. I didn't film on Sunday, didn't upload on Wednesday. This video starts out great. It was just too warm. I'm sorry about that. I just couldn't bring myself to film a video because I was busy sweating. We are having a heat wave here in Germany, in Cologne, and last week we had temperatures close to 40 degrees, which is for those of you who live in the US, it's about 100, 101, 102. It's still very hot, but at least it's somewhat bearable, so I decided to give it a try today. Anyway, as you've gathered from the title, this is the first one in a series of videos that I want to make about the Booker long list, which was announced a little while ago. I didn't film a reaction video to the long list. Instead, what I decided to do this time around is to review a couple of the books that are on the list that you might find interesting, give you my view on that. And I will film probably, I will review probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 books. So not all of them. And then we will see what ends up on the shortlist, which will be announced mid-September. And I might do a reaction video then on the shortlist, because after reading most of the long list, I have read now most of the long list books, DNF'd a couple, not going into that. So I will have a better grasp of when the shortlist is announced, what I think about this shortlist. Anyway, so this is the first one, and the first book I will be reviewing is Avni Doshi's debut novel, Burnt Sugar, which was published in July of this year. And yes, if you find another book by her called Girl in White Cotton, that's the same book. It has a different title for the Indian release. Don't ask me why. Avni Doshi is an American author, American Indian author. She was born in the early 1980s in New Jersey, and she currently lives in Dubai. And like I said, this is a debut novel. And before I go into the book, just one remark about the long list, because most of you who follow the book will have noticed that there are quite a number of debut novels on the long list. I think 7 or 8, which is more than half. So that's quite a big number. And if you're following my channel, you will know that I'm always a bit torn about debut novels on the long list for one of the big book prizes, because most of the time you would say, well, a debut, even if it's really good as a debut, it will probably not be able to compete to a book like, Hilary Mantel's third book in the Thomas Cromwell series, which is also on the long list. On the other hand, it gives debut authors, of course, more exposures if you are on the long list. But, if I were cynical, which I'm not, as you know, I would probably say that putting that many debut authors on the long list could also be a way of, not disappointing a lot of people if Hilary Mantel wins the third time with her book, because if you are a debut author, you're just happy if you make the long list or even the short list, and you don't really expect to win. Anyway, that's just an aside, and I'm not cynical, so it's probably all not true. Let's get into this first book. Okay, here we go. I cranked up the microphone a little bit because I just realized that it's probably not loud enough for you to hear me, which is important. Anyway, the book Burnt Sugar is set in modern day India, and our main character is Antara, and the book explores basically as a main theme the relationship of Antara with her mother. In the present day timeline, because the book has 2 timelines, I will come to that in a minute, but in the present day timeline, Antara is married, she is an artist, and her mother, who lives quite close, the same city, a couple of blocks away, is showing early signs of dementia, of Alzheimer's. And Antara has to find a way to care for her mother, even though, as we learn right from the start of the book, that their relationship is quite troubled. In the second timeline, which I mentioned earlier, we go back to the 1980s when Antara was about 5 years old, and we learn more about why this relationship between mother and daughter is so troubled. Antara's mother left the marriage and to follow a guru and live in an ashram, and then after they leave the ashram, they live on the streets for a little while, and then Antara is put in a boarding school. Her estranged father, with whom she has rarely any contact, paid for that. So we learn how this relationship between mother and daughter developed. I thought it was a good book. It was not brilliant, but again, it's a debut novel. The central theme, the mother-daughter relationship, with this additional idea of how to take care of somebody whom you don't really like that much, maybe, at least your relationship is troubled. That was a really interesting premise and an interesting thought. I think for me, the book had a couple of flaws. Would have been strange for a debut novel not to have any flaws, and one of them was that the author tried to put too much into the book, because the book, apart from the central theme, it also deals with Antara's marriage troubles, her relationship with her estranged father, her coming of age as an artist, when she starts in the second timeline to become an artist in Bombay, and even now when she is an artist, what kind of art she wants to produce. And I thought that that was just a bit much, because those themes were not explored very thoroughly or deeply or interestingly, especially the marriage thing and the relationship between Antara and her father. I think it's often in debut novels you will see or feel that the author just wanted to put too much into the book and should have maybe focused on the main story or the main theme. But apart from that, I thought it was a really good book. It was well written. It had an interesting theme. It had interesting characters. I'm not going to go into the discussion whether or not this book deserved a place on the Booker long list, because if you're following me, you know one of my big pet peeves of the Booker is that they don't publish the list of submissions. So we don't know what the pool of books are from which they chose their long list. So we're not going to go into that. But it was a good book. And for you, if you're interested in that kind of relationship, mother-daughter, set in India, I can certainly recommend it. The second book for this first video on reviewing the Booker was less of a success, I have to say, and that is Tsitsi Dangaremga's book, This Mournable Body, which I read 2 years ago because it came out in 2018, but obviously it had only been published in the UK in January of this year, and for the Booker Prize, the UK publication date is the date that counts. Tsitsi Dangaremga is an author from Zimbabwe, and This Mournable Body is actually the third book in a trilogy about the same main protagonist, Tambu. I read this book back then, 2 years ago, with Sean, who bailed on me and the book about halfway through, and I can't blame him. This was really bad. It was badly written. The story of Tambu, who returns to her hometown, finds odd jobs, and then finds a job as a biology teacher, and it explores her relationship with a couple of friends and then the city. I can't even begin to make whole sentences about how bad this book was. It didn't have any focus. The writing was not good. And the main character just went from this incident to that incident, and it was all bad and horrible. But it never really came together as a story. The character of Tambu, for me at least, never really came together as a person. It read like the very, very first draft of a book that needs a lot of work. For this book, I can certainly say it didn't, in my view, didn't deserve a place on the long list at all, because it was just bad. No matter what the pool of books, of submissions was, this was just a bad book, unfortunately, for me. I didn't reread it now for the Booker Prize 2020. I just couldn't bring myself. I reread bits and pieces so that I had a better recollection of what the book was, but I thought it was really, really bad. In 2018, I remember that, I called it one of the worst books that I've ever read. And that opinion hasn't changed. So, one good book and one complete failure for now. So these were the first 2 reviews that I will make of the Booker long list. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you are still all safe and healthy. I'm looking forward, as always, to your comments, even though, again, I know I'm behind on answering, but I will answer your comments sometime, hopefully this week. I will catch up. But anyway, I'll see you soon in the next one.